Welcome to the National here in Edmonton. You're looking at Oilers fans outside Rogers Place. Jubilation as their team scored and scored again. I'm Ian Henneman singing the Ice District tonight. The Oilers are now off to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. Who saw that coming? I think a lot of people who were behind me tonight. They beat the Florida Panthers 5-1 at home in Edmonton, keeping Canada's chance to end the 31-year Cup drought alive.
They will Monday night play a one-game showdown for all the marbles and the Stanley Cup.
Cinderella story, comeback story, call it what you like. It certainly has been enchanting. The Oilers celebrating tonight after fighting their way back from a 3-0 deficit in this series. It is now tied 3 games apiece. They head to Florida for that decisive Game 7. The winner of that one single game, after all the hockey so far this year, the winner of that one game will be the Stanley Cup champion. Let's go to Nancy Carlson. She's been with fans all evening in the Ice District. And Nancy, give us a sense of the mood when that final horn sounded.
Oh my gosh, Ian. As soon as that final buzzer went, everyone was on their feet, like jumping up and down. I mean, high-fiving. You know, we talk about the power of sport, and that's really what it's about. So many people coming together to celebrate in this one amazing moment, right? And I mean, when we talk about Oilers fans, right now it's about hockey fans, Canadian hockey fans coming together to celebrate this team that may have, well, I mean, they do have a chance to bring the Stanley Cup back to Canada for the first time in so long, and fans are absolutely ecstatic about it. Have a listen.
This has been 18 years in the making. We have a jersey from 2006 when they were last in the Stanley Cup Finals. Look at this shit. We are there. We are taking this cup.
Oh my God, I graduated today.
We're going to Game 7. We're going to Game 7. We're going to Game 7.
I love my boys.
Oilers in 7, Lord. Oilers in 7.
I never lost faith in my boys. I love them.
And I remember back in 2006 when the Oilers came so close. And to feel this now, like I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, because this is actually happening. And the energy, you can still hear it behind me. Fans are so happy about tonight.
I can see the team store over your left shoulder. I was there yesterday and was surprised to find a family from Sweden who said they've been watching Oilers games late into the night all year. They came here to watch a finals game. Any surprises for you tonight as you were talking to fans, Nancy?
You know, I think that it's interesting because when you talk about people from different places, being able to travel from here to Florida, and the people that are willing to travel that distance from wherever they are. We actually met some friends, some new friends. He is from Germany and they are from Edmonton, and they met in Florida, and now they say that they're going to be friends for life. And you have people, I talked to people, a now former Calgary Flames fan. I know. Absolutely excited to see where the team is now. And again, just that sense of excitement. You can get so many people. Where else can you get thousands of people who come from so many different places, so many different backgrounds in one place, all rooting for the same thing? Having that feeling and that emotion, and here in Edmonton too, is a very special feeling.
Nancy, you've done such a terrific job. You've captured the mood of what's been going on in the Ice District so perfectly. And by the way, every time I threw to you and said, can you describe the mood, you started every hit quite appropriately with the phrase, oh my gosh. So it has been terrific. And so thank you very much.
Thanks, Ian.
CBC News Edmonton AM host and longtime sportscaster Mark Connolly is with me now. So as we speak to a Western Canadian audience, as a guy who knows about sports, as a guy who knows about the city, as a guy who spent virtually his entire life here, what are your reflections tonight?
Well, you know, when I was 19 years old, the Oilers came into the NHL, and my buddies and I all bought season tickets. That's how different the NHL was back in 1979 when they came in. And we have followed them ever since. Now, I've gone through my own little journey being a sportscaster for 25 years. When you're covering the team, you're not as big a fan. I still was a fan, but you got to separate yourself slightly, right? So you just try to be a little bit laid back about it. And then when I became the morning show host, now I'm a bit more of a cheerleader for the city, so I can cheer on the Oilers. My phone's blowing up right now. My son texted me saying he can't believe it. I'm on an email chain with 8 other guys who went to high school with. Everybody's celebrating. Some guys planning to go to Florida. Even my wife watched the game, and she doesn't usually watch the games. So Edmonton is enraptured with the Oilers. I mean, it feels so good. It just feels so good to have the team doing so well. And everybody says, you know, we're doing great, as if they're part of the team. But it's just such a great feeling when you have this joy. I think other Canadians can relate to it, right? Because so many people love their teams. And when they have this kind of success, you feel like you're having success.
I've heard so many people, especially in this province, but across the country, talk about how their memories of Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier and Paul Coffey fired a lifetime of devotion to the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah. That's
happening presumably right now with McDavid, Draisaitl, Bouchard, Hyman, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they are. That is four players. The 4 players you mentioned right now are the Gretzky, Messier, Curry, Anderson of this group. And Coffey, throw him in there as well. They are, you know, a couple of those guys going to the Hall of Fame for sure. McDavid and Draisaitl, and they have just taken a step above. And the kids who are growing up with them, and the young people, and we saw it here tonight, Ian, right? If you're 19 years old in Edmonton, you don't have season tickets unless your parents bought them, right? But there were thousands of them here and enjoying this, and they relate to it. They are part of it, and that's what they want to be part of. And they love their team.
And one last thing I want to point out, I know those of you who are Edmonton Oilers fans know this already. Those of you in Alberta know this already, but it bears repeating, especially from a guy who lives in Vancouver. This is a team that has a lot of Canadian hockey players in it, and a lot of Albertans, including the hometown boy in nets. And you know what? In this era of sports where free agents go from continent to continent sometimes,
for sure,
kind of nice to have a hometown kid playing for the team.
It is. Stuart Skinner, and he's paid his dues, right? He came up through the system. He was a first-round pick, but he wasn't like a heralded guy like Connor McDavid, a surefire. He's going to make it to the NHL. He ground it out. He made it through. And so many people are cheering for him. People who knew him when he was a midget player, a bantam player, when he's 12, 13 years old, and you're not quite sure, is this guy going to make it? And then when he comes up and plays the way he has, he's undefeated in games 4 to 7 in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Unbeaten in 10 games.
Yeah, it's an incredible statistic. And I thought, sometimes statistics don't really mean what they appear to say.
Yeah.
This one means everything.
He is the nicest guy.
Yeah.
He is such a nice guy. Everybody from Edmonton, right? Nice people. Absolutely. And he's one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a fantastic story. Let's hope, the story is continuing.
Yes.
Let's hope the storybook ending is what we see on Monday. Mark Connolly, really nice having you on the program.
Thanks, Ian. Appreciate it.
We have more to come from Edmonton tonight as the city celebrates this incredible comeback and looks ahead to Game 7. But first, let's go to Erica Johnson in Vancouver for tonight's other stories.
All right, quite an evening. Thank you, Ian. On another note, we are in Labrador, where hundreds of wildfire evacuees are on edge and watching the winds. 2 major wildfires burning just west of Churchill Falls. For now, both are still south of the Churchill River, the line of defense between the town, which is home to a massive hydro plant that powers the province and parts of Quebec. Those evacuees were sent nearly 300 kilometers away to Happy Valley Goose Bay. And as Kayla Hounsell shows us, they are finding comfort and community.
Leon Williams knows he and his family are doing better than most who fled Churchill Falls because, get this, they were planning to camp here in Happy Valley Goose Bay anyway. But now this feels like anything but a vacation.
It's anxious. All your stuff is in Churchill and everything is in your home.
The biggest concern is the wind.
30 gusting to 50. That plays a significant role in providing oxygen and energy to the fire.
Winds across the vast Labrador landscape can change in an instant. So far, they're in the right direction, helping to keep the fire away from the town and that all-important hydroelectric plant, one of the largest in North America. supplying power for Newfoundland and Labrador and parts of Quebec. Essential staff have stayed behind.
We are going through scenarios now that they're almost fiction. To think that that a forest fire could actually shut down this massive hydroelectric project and so on, but the reality is right in front of us now.
Water bombers have arrived from Quebec and Ontario to help these from Newfoundland and Labrador. So the firefight remains in full force, and so too do the offers to help.
We are overflowing right now with such generous support and donations, so we actually had to put a hold on donations.
They're also trying to keep their visitors' minds off their troubles. This 9-year-old is painting a wildfire, and her dad, who had to stay behind to work.
It was really scary because the fires, he said he could see like a beam of light if he looked out the window.
This evacuation center was shut down less than 24 hours after it opened. No longer needed because local residents opened their homes.
There's no lack of support in trying to get people to at least get some normal life.
The town that supplies the power now seeing the power of community. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Happy Valley Goose Bay.
Late tonight, an out-of-control wildfire has forced parts of Port-Cartier, Quebec to evacuate. About 1,000 people had a deadline of 9 p.m. local time to leave. The fire is just 15 kilometers outside the city. Transportation and temporary accommodation is being set up for residents. One person is dead following a major crash involving a school bus in the BC interior. You can see in the distance there, the bus apparently rolled down an embankment off the highway. A school district official confirmed the more than 30 students and staff on the bus are accounted for. It's still unknown how many are injured, but some were transported to hospital. It happened north of Lac-La-Hache at about 1 p.m. local time. Police confirm following the bus crash, a person was struck by a vehicle and did not survive. A tragic story out of southwestern Ontario. Police are investigating after a family of 4 has been found dead in their home.
It's a real tragedy that's happened in this community. 4 lives have been taken.
The mayor says the bodies of a father, mother, and 2 children were discovered in the family home in the community of Heroine near Windsor, a town of roughly 2,500 near Lake Erie. Police say no arrests have been made, but that there is no threat to the community, calling the deaths an unthinkable tragedy. As the humanitarian crisis deepens in Gaza, some of the most vulnerable are unable to get out to get potentially life-threatening medical treatment, many of them children. Their stories and the images you'll see are hard to watch, but show the reality they face. Senior international correspondent Margaret Evans shows us their heartbreaking wait for help.
What little choice there was in Gaza doesn't live there anymore. Not for a mother who would ease the pain of a son's illness, or for those who would coax him to play. 9-year-old Eunice has spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy. We applied for him to go abroad for treatment, says his mother, Hanima Juma. But because the border was closed, we couldn't travel. Eunice's condition has dangerously worsened from malnutrition and dehydration. A boy who weighed 55 pounds now weighs 17. Dr. Ahmed Al-Farah says the lack of aid reaching Gaza is weakening even the strong.
All the special formulas of milk stopped. All the fresh foods nearly stopped.
A lack of drugs and medical supplies, he says, limits his ability to help the most vulnerable.
They need to be referred and they need to be evacuated as soon as possible.
Aid agencies estimate that 10,000 Palestinians are currently in need of medical treatment outside Gaza, a challenging prospect even before the war, and much harder since Israel took over the Rafah border crossing with Egypt.
Since the military operation started in Rafah, closing the Rafah crossing point, I haven't heard about any further medical evacuation that took place.
UNICEF's Jonathan Crick says a ceasefire that would allow immediate humanitarian aid in is the only and best solution for Gaza's children.
To be able to be treated and not to wait with bleeding on a hospital corridor, for the hospital systems to be put back in place, for the food and the water system to be put back in place.
Help that might offer more than an inevitable outcome. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Across Canada today, thousands marked National Indigenous Peoples Day. It's a time to both celebrate and commemorate First Nations, Inuit, and Métis cultures. This powwow in Winnipeg was partly organized to acknowledge the legacy of residential schools. In Toronto, elders led a sunrise ceremony outside City Hall. Over in Nova Scotia, the Bear River First Nation held events aimed at bringing together Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. Coinciding with today's events, a rare trip made by Inuit families from the north to Quebec City. They're honoring lost loved ones forced decades ago into tuberculosis sanatoriums. Juanita Taylor shows us the journey, all about healing.
It was a day of mourning, healing, and closure. Families from Nunavut and Nunavik honoring their loved ones who never made it home from Park Savard Hospital, a former tuberculosis sanatorium. About 50 Inuit are buried here, most in unmarked graves, including Annie Augert's brother. He was only an infant when he was sent south alone. She is also a TB survivor.
I am here for the memorial for my baby brother, Paulo Sitamo Augert, but actually I'm here for myself too.
A monument was unveiled with the names of Inuit who never made it home.
We decided to build that monument so that the family members will know they're here. We're making sure that the family members know and the souls of these persons are visited.
In Quebec City, the sanatorium received Inuit patients for nearly 3 decades, starting in the 1940s. This medical ship traveled to Inuit communities offering care, but anyone suspected to have TB was forced to go south to sanatoriums. Many never said goodbye. Some stayed at the sanatorium for years, losing their culture and language. Mary Tukdoljuk is from Nauyat. She's here to remember her late father. This advocate wants to make sure Canadians learn about this dark chapter.
Experiments were done also on these patients. No communication between them and their families back home. It has caused a lot of trauma.
Soil from Nunavut and Nunavik, brought by Inuit, blended with soil here in Quebec, bringing a sense of peace for Augert.
I feel the fulfillment of my life that was missing.
A place where families can finally put their loved ones to rest. Juanita Taylor, CBC News, Quebec City.
Turning to New Brunswick now, where another member of the powerful Irving business family has died. James K. Irving has passed away at 96, 1 month after his younger brother, Arthur. J.K. Irving was the eldest son of family patriarch Kenneth Colin Irving. He helped his father build a single gas station and sawmill into a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. A statement from the company tonight says James K. Irving died peacefully at home in St. John.
In just 2 minutes, we're going to come back here to Edmonton. A huge factor in this incredible comeback by the Oilers, their captain Connor McDavid, the man who's steering the ship.
We could be watching the best ever to play hockey.
And why his playoff performance could cement his spot among the greats. A rousing rendition of the national anthem here outside Rogers Place moments before Game 6 got underway, and the Edmonton Oilers eventually punching their ticket to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final. A historic win tonight for the Oilers, and one of the keys to their success, their goaltender, Stuart Skinner, who, as we mentioned, is from Edmonton. He was asked tonight how he kept hope alive.
You guys believed. Why? Like, why did you believe that this was possible?
Having a belief, I think, it's kind of an untold, it's hard to really put it into words. There's just a feeling, a really strong feeling of belief with this whole group, and we've had that for a long time now. And no matter what situation that we put ourselves in, we always do have that belief. So me saying that felt very just normal. I really do believe in this group, and I'm sticking to those words. If anyone can do it, it's the Oil. So, we got a lot more work to do here, though.
Of course, another player who's been dominating some of the games in this series, their captain, Connor McDavid. And tonight, Aaron Collins takes a closer look at the hockey superstar and why he's considered one of the greatest players ever.
McDavid stayed on side.
Just another day at the office for Connor McDavid. But this assist, special. The 34th of this postseason, breaking a record held by Wayne Gretzky. Part of a growing legacy, even McDavid grudgingly acknowledges.
Obviously not the focus, with where we're at, but, not lost on me, what he means to the game.
Not the focus, but hard to ignore. Gretzky's records long thought to be unassailable, but as McDavid surpasses some of the great one's totals, a conversation long thought unthinkable is ramping up.
We could be watching the best ever to play hockey.
Hockey insiders who've watched both players caught up in the debate. What makes Connor McDavid so good?
It's that he can do anything. His speed is unbelievable. He can go around people. He can go through people. He can hold up and suddenly deceive you. He's just the all-around package, and I've never seen a guy like that.
Of course, McDavid, good as he is, still has a mountain to climb to catch Gretzky. The great one scored nearly 3,000 points in his career. McDavid's yet to hit 1,000. Still, the debate over McDavid and the great one alive among Oilers fans.
He means, everything, basically.
Just a legend. He is just godlike. He's phenomenal.
Ooh, he's not quite Gretzky yet, but I think he's right below.
I think he's getting up there. He's close to number one. He's getting close to Gretzky-esque.
McDavid's coach, a believer.
Wants to win, wants to be the best. So between his love and passion, I think that just allows him to rise up.
Of course, there's another area McDavid trails the great one. Gretzky led the Oilers to 4 Stanley Cups, something McDavid hasn't done, at least not yet. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Calgary.
In another sports story, Canada's debut at Copa America is being marred by a wave of online abuse. Those fans attacking a Canadian for a hard tackle on Argentinian superstar Lionel Messi.
And I don't believe that passion of the sport or passion for the game that you love is an excuse.
How the player is responding, what officials are doing about it, and the potential penalty for these acts of racism. Canadian soccer fans and officials are speaking out tonight after player Moïse Bombito was subjected to racist abuse following an on-field collision with Argentine superstar Lionel Messi. Here's Ithel Musa on what happened and the demands for accountability.
For Moïse Bombito, playing against Argentina in Canada's Copa America debut was something to relish.
I mean, it's just excitement, to be honest, because you get to play against the best player in the world.
That player, Argentinian superstar Lionel Messi. In an impressive showing, Canada held Argentina to a scoreless first half. But late in the second, an incident that triggered an onslaught of hate. Bombito raced Messi to the ball, making contact with his ankle. Messi left the field, but later finished the game. Still, Bombito was subjected to an avalanche of racist abuse online.
I don't believe that passion of a sport or passion for the game that you love is an excuse.
Soccer fans are also sharing their disgust with his treatment.
As a black person, it's very frustrating as myself, who's a fan of the sport as well, to see that.
It's uncalled for, right? At the end of the day, it's not part of the game.
I'm just tired of it, to be honest, and I don't know the way forward.
Canada Soccer and CONCACAF have now issued statements condemning the racist posts, with the International Association saying it will seek ways to investigate the accounts which posted racist material.
Hopefully they can come together, find a meaningful way to deter fans from this type of engagement.
Incidents of anti-black racism in soccer are nothing new. Earlier this month, 3 Valencia fans were handed 8-month prison sentences after pleading guilty to racially insulting Real Madrid forward Vinicius Jr., the first ever conviction of its kind in professional Spanish soccer.
It hurts because you know that these players are not going to get the full experience of being able to play their game at the international level.
Bombito's reaction to all this message on Instagram saying, "My beautiful Canada, no room for that BS." Idil Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
Now let's dig deeper into tonight's top stories. This is the breakdown.
We just, feel that we can do it.
From 3 games in the hole, can the Oilers really claw back to take the cup? But first, Skookum Jim, George Carmack. Their names are Yukon legend, but not hers.
She's the reason the Klondike Gold Rush started.
Once the wealthiest Indigenous woman in the world.
A woman who knew what her priorities were, and it wasn't the gold.
The untold story of Shaaw. Jackie McKay shows us that extraordinary story by going to the source, Shawclaw's home, Carcross-Tagish First Nation, and a time and a place that transformed Yukon territory.
She was the catalyst. She was the reason. She's the gold in the story as far as we're concerned here in Tagish country, up here in Carcross. She's the gold of the story, right?
This is a story you kind of have to look for if you want to hear it. It's a side of the gold rush that we don't get to hear very often. We just hear about all the people that came up in Dawson City and how bustling it was.
Shaaw is believed to be the instigator of the Klondike Gold Rush. She was a member of the Tagish First Nation and the Doklawady clan. Her story was passed down to her Doklawady relatives.
She's the reason the Klondike Gold Rush started. There's no doubt in my mind that her skills absolutely supported these men in their quest for gold.
Shaaw was raised here, around this area of Carcross, and was the middle child in a family of 8 siblings. Eventually, Shaaw would become known as Kate Carmack, when she would marry a prospector who moved north to get rich. George Carmack moved quickly. At first, he married Shawclaw's relative, but she died just months after the marriage. So George married Shaaw.
That's how clans would do it, so that no one was left behind. If there was someone that could be paired with a widow, then they would do that.
Eventually, Shaaw and George left Carcross in search for gold, and they were gone for many years.
Now this is where her famous brother, Skookum Jim, comes in. This is Shawclaw's great-grandniece, Gutstatine Bessie Jim. She shares the legend of Skookum Jim and how he received an important message before he went looking for his sister. As the story goes, he was ill and went to sit in the sun when he came upon a frog stuck in a hole.
He put his cane down. They say that frog jumped on the end of it, and he put it up to the ground, and then he called those boys, "Take this frog to the water right away," he said. They run with it. And he had a dream, or like if it really happened, he said that frog was just green and just full of life, sitting right here on his chest. That frog talked to him. Tell him, "You helped me. You saved my life. Now I'm going to save yours." and I'm going to make you rich.
He packed up his family, his wife, and his daughter and enlisted the help of his nephews and their families. They all paddled north to Klondike, a place where the Han set up their fish camps. And here they found Shaaw, Tláa, and George, and their 3-year-old daughter, whose English name is Graffy Grace Carmack. Now, what happens next varies depending on who's telling the story.
Skookum Jim at one point on a trip went down to the creek to drink some water. They were packing moose meat at the time and saw gold or the color of gold in the creek and picked it up and took it back up to George and said, is this what we're looking for?
Bonanza Creek. Oh, there it is. That's where the gold was found.
But for most of history, it was told that George found the gold. Author Deb Vanoss wrote a book on Shaaw Tláa and said there is proof George didn't find it.
Folks down there looked into the archives and found an unpublished account that George himself had said to a local person that the exact same story about Jim finding the gold when they went moose hunting. But for his entire life, he let people think he had found it himself.
George's nickname was Lying George. He told Skookum Jim and his nephews that Indians weren't allowed to register discovery claims. In 1896, George filed the discovery claim for himself, which granted him 2 claims on Bonanza Creek. Skookum Jim and his nephews each got 1 claim.
These 4 Tagish-Kwan people traveling with George, all 5 of them, to me, were the original discoverers of gold, of the Klondike Gold Rush.
Now, here's a but, and it's a big one. If you were to visit the McBride Museum in Whitehorse, they say Shaaw Tláa discovered the first gold nugget. Either way, everyone got very rich. Newspapers published accounts of Shaaw, Tláa, and George throwing gold coins out the window of the Seattle hotel, while people on the streets brawled for the money. Skookum Jim and Dawson Charlie could be seen laughing from their hotel room windows. Stories like this are celebrated by James, who says the American newspapers often didn't understand Shaaw Tláa's cultural teachings to share what you had.
You're wealthy, rich, and an amazing leader if you give it all away. That's a part of our clan way. You aren't rich unless you can give it away.
Shaaw Tláa and George would make an estimated $1 million from their gold claim. The family made their way through the U.S. to California, where George was from and his sister lived.
George's sister didn't like Kate very well, right? And I couldn't imagine what that must have been like for Shaaw Tláa to live in this woman's house.
Shaaw Tláa and George Carmack were living in California, but George returned back to their claim up north where he met another woman, a prostitute in Dawson City, that he eventually married and ran away with. Shaaw Tláa was still living with his sister in California, and the two never saw each other again. She eventually moved back here to Carcross and lived somewhere in this neighborhood in a house that Skookum Jim had built for her.
Shaaw Tláa was left with almost nothing from their fortune. She tried to take the legal route to get what she was owed from George, but their traditional marriage back in Carcross wasn't recognized by the court.
At the time, it wouldn't be acknowledged that our ways of knowing and being actually meant something to anybody. Today, I think they would. Skookum Jim, Dachlawady house in Carcross.
Shaaw Tláa's family still had quite a bit of wealth. It came from Skookum Jim and her nephew's claims. But there's been a deep separation in the family ever since. When Shaaw Tláa's daughter was 16, she went to visit her father and his new wife Marguerite in Seattle. Graffy Grace had a child with Marguerite's brother, married him, and never returned to Carcross. Shaaw Tláa never met her grandson, who was named after Skookum Jim. Skookum Jim's memory lives on here, the Yukon's oldest Indigenous organization, called the Skookum Jim Friendship Center. It was built on a trust he left for his daughter. It still operates in Whitehorse today.
Yeah.
Desiree Anderson, the Friendship Center's cultural program manager, says she came here as a child.
A place where you can go to get help and support, whether it's for school, for employment, for cultural reconnection.
Looking around the Yukon, though, you don't see the name Shaaw like you see her brother Skookum Jim's. She died in Carcross of the Spanish flu in 1920.
The story of a woman whose resilience was amazing, and a woman who knew what her priorities were, and a woman who understood what true wealth was. And it wasn't the gold. It was her people, her family, her way of life.
Shaaw, this beautiful woman who in our history blazed the trail through some pretty tough times and traumatic times for our people. Her story wasn't properly told. She wasn't properly acknowledged or respected, or was our culture and our ways at the time.
We'll never know exactly who picked up that first gold nugget, but that moment changed the Yukon forever. And Shaaw never benefited from the gold rush in the same way the men she kept alive did, even though once she was the wealthiest Indigenous woman in the world.
In honor of National Indigenous History Month, CBC Indigenous has created a series of interactive stories highlighting First Nations, Inuit, and Métis trailblazers. You can find them all at CBC Indigenous. And now we go back to Ian in Edmonton, overlooking the Ice District outside Rogers Place.
It was a night here of intensity, electricity, and goal after goal for the Oilers. And for one Stanley Cup veteran and former Oilers general manager, the dominance tonight, the comeback, was no surprise. His thoughts coming right up.
We're one game at a time.
The Oilers on the edge of elimination since Game 3. To take the Stanley Cup now, almost unthinkable.
If there's any group that can do it, it's this group.
Last time it happened, Mackenzie King was Prime Minister, FDR was President, and the Second World War was raging. Is a historic comeback within reach? It certainly got closer tonight. Shortly after the game was over and Edmonton won, I spoke with Kevin Lowe, a 6-time Stanley Cup champion, including 5 with the Oilers, also former Oilers coach and general manager. And when I asked him whether he expected this from his former team, there was no hesitation.
I did, actually. And I thought before the series that we matched up well against them. And I'm not going to divulge my reasons for that. But and I thought we played well at times. But we really shot ourselves in the foot a bunch of times, which contributed to goals scored by Florida. And we've obviously cleaned that up in the last 3 games. And we'll see what happens next Monday in Florida.
I'm hoping that you and I get a chance to talk more specifically about this for Sunday's National. But let me ask you this now. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but you must have played a number of Game 7s in your life. And I'm curious about, well, one in particular against the Vancouver Canucks in 94 for sure,
Correct,
right?
Correct, yes.
What's it like to be a player in that time between winning or the Game 6 and getting ready for Game 7?
Well, it depends whether you're the team that just tied it up or the team that lost the game. And in my case, that happened to me twice. With the 87 Oilers, we didn't close at home, and then we lost on the road. Fortunately, we closed at home. And maybe I shouldn't tell this story because in 94 at the Rangers, we did the same thing and closed at home. But I would say the difference, this Oiler team has a lot of horsepower. And Florida is going to have to play a picture-perfect game and have a lot of hope to beat this team right now.
I was talking to Mark Connolly about this earlier, and again, I'm very interested in hearing your hockey player's perspective on this. The Oilers 3 years ago were a team that maybe would win a game like this 9-7 or lose the game 9-7. Here, they only let in 1 goal against a really good Florida Panther team. What's your perspective on how the Oilers have changed?
Yeah, they they collectively learned how to play in the playoffs now. They understand the importance of defending and to be, that's got to be throughout the lineup. And you can't even take a second off with that mindset. And the minute you do, at this level, it's so high. The minute you do, the second you do, the puck's in the net. And they had their blips at times in these playoffs, but this is a process that's been happening for a couple of years. I think, the couple of years in the playoffs previously, they learned a lot. And they're fortunate to be able to battle through their mistakes in the earlier rounds to hopefully bodes well. Like, they played a fantastic game tonight. And as you know, that's what a Stanley Cup team looks like. So if they can replicate that, they'll win a cup.
We're here with Kevin Lowe, a 6-time Stanley Cup champion, 5 of those Stanley Cups with the Edmonton Oilers. I know you have a lot to do, so I just have 2 more questions for you. And one of them is, what do you make of that?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, what do you make of it? Have you seen it before?
Well, I don't know. So I live in Vancouver. And in 2011, I mean, things ended badly with the riot after both 94 and 2011. But other than that, the crowds built and built and built. Summertime weather, long nights, it was magical. I forgot what it was like. And then I came out here. Now, we in Vancouver didn't have the equivalent of the tailgate party or the moss pit. But, I mean, as a player, do you think the players are aware of what's going on out here?
100%.
Yeah.
They know it because their families are out in it and see it and let them know about it. And they, you can, when you're in the dressing room, you can hear the intensity of the crowd out, and that really fires up players. I mean, Edmonton's crowd in the Stanley Cup playoffs I'm a little biased, of course, but I don't think there's any better. And then you asked about this. Yeah, this was Daryl Cates' vision. This ice district, so something like that, this would happen one day for people to come down and congregate, and even people that don't have tickets to the game can watch and be in the environment, and it's, I don't know what, they probably had 40,000 people in the rink and outside the rink tonight, and not a lot of places can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one last question. You were general manager of the Edmonton Oilers, right? And there was a time in hockey when, before the salary cap, it was hard for small market teams to compete against big market teams. And there's been a time when players didn't necessarily want to come to cities like Edmonton because of the pressure, and it's not exciting like New York. This is a team that's filled with superstars, and there are players like Matthias Ekholm, who came here, and his wife wants to be in Edmonton. What do you make of that?
Well, I would say that any player that's ever played here has simply loved it. They any of the misgivings they might have heard about Edmonton, they realize don't exist. We know that. I've lived here for 45 plus years. And, if it has been difficult in past years, and you touched on in the pre-cap era, where we had a payroll of about 35 million, Dallas had a payroll of 85 million.
Wow.
Couldn't compete. That's completely gone. Any market can win. But if the Oilers win a Stanley Cup, they'll get free agents here.
Coming up, now that the Oilers are just 1 win away from the Stanley Cup, the team, the city, sure has been celebrating.
Skinner clear, down the ice, there's another, no doubt now.
Ecstasy in Edmonton, relive the magic next. The energy never wavered here for even a second. The passion of the city on display, and in a country that's hungered for a Stanley Cup, the excitement for many at a fever pitch.
Let's go! We want the cup! We want the cup! Drexel in front, scores! Reek in, scores! Let's go!
Play was offside, no goal.
Zach Hyman in the express lane, scores! Empty net, scores! In behind, Skinner cleared, down the ice, there's another, They were 2-9-1. They were 0-3. And they will Monday night play a one-game showdown for all the marbles and the Stanley Cup.
The game's been over for, what, hours now? I don't know if you can hear this. Horns still honking, people still chanting. The party is still going. This is a city that is celebrating. Thank you for being with us. You can watch anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app and subscribe to the Nationals YouTube channel. I'm Ian Hannah-Mansing in Edmonton. Good night.